It is 4:06 on this Monday. The Vince Coglianese Show. Mike Opelka, my name, sitting in for Vince. He is on the mend, on the recovery end of things. He's even able to use his voice a little bit. If you were listening in the first hour, you heard Corey tell the story, and it's going in the right direction, and it's sounding good. So mending from surgery on his throat. And for those of us who make a living using our throats and our voices, it's kind of an important thing. But we have many, many important issues. Keep your prayers, though, going for Vince. Your good thoughts and your prayers. They do work. I believe it. Light a candle or two if you want. We're keeping our eyes on everything in Wilmington, Delaware, where I live, and I operate from my little home studio. The trial for Hunter Biden has started with the jury selection. They're trying to narrow down the pool of jurors to 36, and then they'll start trying to get 12. I was fortunately not called, although it would have been interesting to be in that courtroom. Jill Biden reportedly going to be there to give some kind of credibility. And I don't call her Dr. Jill. You know, I'm just sorry. That's a PhD in education. It's different than a medical doctor. I know that Marjorie Taylor Greene was calling Dr. Fauci Mr. Fauci. She finally did call him Dr. Fauci at the end of it all when there was a brouhaha in the hearing today. Yes, a brouhaha happened in the hearing today. It got ugly. And it ended up, it's laughable to me. I know I shouldn't be laughing at that, but it did end up getting a little nasty. And Jamie Raskin taking up for Dr. Fauci. Do we really need Jamie Raskin to take up for Dr. Fauci? Here's just a little bit of that because we're going to get to our guest from Heritage here in just a second.
Mr. Chairman,
Point of order.
just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in
Gentlelady will
prison.
suspend. And the gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
And she did eventually, but it was a little silly there for a while. So what else happened today? What else went down in this hearing, this House hearing with Dr. Fauci? Robert Moffit is joining us, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Robert, welcome to the show, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm very, very happy to be here, Mike.
Now, when you watched the hearing, I watched the entire thing. I listened to some of it.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to get any accountability out of this? It seems like we continue to have these hearings, and there's a whole lot of banter back and forth. But is there ever a real serious criminal referral that can come out of something like this?
You can only get a criminal referral for testimony under oath that is false if you can prove discrepancies in the record. And Fauci has testified for 14 hours previously under oath in an executive session, 2 days worth of testimony. And of course, today was the public hearing. Unless Wenstrup and the committee actually show that there's a discrepancy in the testimony, I don't think you're going to get any kind of. You have to prove somebody's lying. You have to prove perjury, and I did not see that today. I saw some other things that I thought were very interesting, but I certainly didn't. I don't think that I saw anything that would come close to that.
Well, that's an interesting statement. Now, can we do a little comparison to something? Because based on what you're saying, Robert, I think I might offer something to the committee. And I'm going to go way back to Jim Jordan in August of, I think it was 2021, I think. Jim Jordan had all the emails from Dr. Fauci. He had asked Dr. Fauci to appear, and Fauci was too busy going on MSNBC, so he wouldn't come before Jordan's hearing. But I'm just going to play the first little bit of this, and then we'll compare it to what Dr. Fauci said. So this was from Jim Jordan almost 3 years ago.
Friday, January 31st, 2020 at 10:32 p.m., Dr. Fauci gets an email from Christian Anderson. Christian Anderson's a British researcher who's received numerous grants from NIH. Two really important sentences are in that email. Two sentences that get Dr. Fauci's attention. The first is this: the unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the genome. So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some of the features look engineered. Again, this is January 31st, 2020. Second sentence: Eddie, Bob, Mike, and myself all find the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. Email arrives 10:32 to Dr. Fauci on January 31st, 2020.
So that was the first email, and he was reading verbatim from the email that Fauci received.
Yeah.
And then,
famous email.
Yeah, it's kind of important. And then today, Fauci, in that hearing, in relation to that date, January 31st of 2020, said this.
I will now use my remaining time to directly address certain issues that have been seriously distorted concerning me. The first issue concerns my actions regarding the possibility that SARS-CoV-2 might have resulted from a lab leak. On January 31st, 2020, I was informed through phone calls with Jeremy Farrar, then director of the Wellcome Trust in the UK, and then with Christian Anderson, a highly regarded scientist at Scripps Research Institute, that they and Eddie Holmes, a world-class evolutionary biologist from Australia, were concerned that the genomic sequence of SARS-CoV-2 suggested that the virus could have been manipulated in a lab.
So, Robert, he's saying there were phone calls when there were emails that Jordan was quoting. Is that a big enough leap to open a further investigation, or no?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, they've already looked at it. I mean, the subcommittee, the select subcommittee headed by Wenstrup, issued a very, very big report on this actually about 3 months ago, and I think that's all very important because it is, I think, worth further. I mean, we need a smoking gun, which is we've got to prove, I think, that there was some kind of action that was illegal, if you're talking about prosecutions. What happened, though, is very, very concerning, which is in January 31st, I mean, I read the emails myself. I mean, Fauci was very well aware that, the 5 virologists that were on the telephone with him, the telephone call with him, actually was February 1st, the next day, were all concerned that this had been genetically engineered. And, of course, Bob Gary and Christian Anderson and Ed Holmes all said the same thing. The thing that was mysterious is the fact that, like 3 or 4 days later, you had 180-degree reversal of that position on the part of those virologists. I think, and I still think that, Jim Jordan certainly feels this way, and I think a lot of other members of Congress, that was a very, very strange development, that, you would have such a radical shift in such a short period of time without any kind of hard empirical data to the contrary. In other words, in January, Communist China shut down Wuhan. They shut down the Wuhan lab. They sealed it. The People's Liberation Army, the military, had a major role in this, and they also punished dissent, crushed dissent among dissident scientists. So, there's no way that, Anderson and Holmes and Gary and all those guys could have had access to hard data, which would prove to them anyway, prove beyond reasonable doubt that this thing had some kind of a natural origin. And by the way, Mike, to this very day, the whole argument resting on the natural source of this virus depends upon the existence of an intermediate host, meaning a mammal, who transmitted the virus to humans, from bats, because there's never been a case where the bat virus, directly resulted in something like this. Yeah. So they have not gotten, they come up with things like the raccoon dog and a pangolin, but they've never actually, the pro natural source. The people who argue that this had a source in nature have not yet come up with the intermediate host. And to me, I think that's the most damning argument against the natural evolution of this virus.
Well, that reality should be brought up as well. But the fact that the timeline from January 31st, 2020 to those several days following in February, where Fauci engineered a conference call that he hosted, and then the article that was written supporting the theory that it was not a lab leak, that he also edited or was offered the opportunity to edit the article and then quoted it in a White House meeting as if it were research that he just read and didn't have a hand in it, seems to be some of the most damning evidence to me as well. And the fact that,
today,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, today he testified under oath that he did not edit it.
Well, that's
he got
interesting.
Copies of it, but he said under oath, he said he did not edit it. I mean, they asked him the direct question. I think, Mike, the most important thing that came out of this, though, is the Fauci's admission that the lab leak is not a conspiracy theory. I think he under oath, Fauci repeatedly stated that while he personally leaned toward a natural origin for the coronavirus, that he had an open mind on the subject when the news first came out of China in 2020. And he told the subcommittee that he did not try to steer the conclusion about the COVID origins, whether the coronavirus had a natural origin or was the product of genetic engineering. Now, he said that under oath. I mean, if that is a lie, I mean, that can be contradicted under oath. But the truth is that I think my own view is that what this does, it puts Fauci on the side of common sense, in the sense that, both the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Energy have both concluded that the lab was the source of the coronavirus pandemic that killed over 7 million people.
It's really interesting, but I still want accountability, Robert. Robert Moffit joining us today from Heritage.
Sure.
I want accountability, and I think the American people would like accountability, too. This just seems like this is Congress, again, in a partisan exercise, because all we get out of Debbie Dingell and Raskin and everybody else is fawning over Fauci. And then we get the situation where Marjorie Taylor Greene does a little bit of theatrics, and while it's entertaining, I don't think it pushes anything forward. I feel like I'm frustrated by this. Yeah.
I agree with you. But the thing is, I thought the best questioning was done by the general counsel, Mitch Benzine, who actually did, I think, a first-class job nailing down on the record clarity with regard to what Fauci had said previously and what he said today. And I thought that was very, very, very useful. But I go back to this question, for example, the origins. In the United States, as I said earlier, there's division within the intelligence community about whether this was a natural or natural, or the coronavirus was natural or a product of a lab. Our allies have been somewhat forthright on this. The former head of MI6, the British intelligence service, Sir Richard Dearlove, I love that name, Sir Richard Dearlove, he made the argument that this came out of a lab as well. But he also made another point, and I think that point is really the critical point. This is what he said, and I happen to agree with him. This is not going to be solved. This issue will not be resolved by debate among virologists or even congressional hearings. The only way we're actually going to get to the bottom of this is old-fashioned intelligence operations, by our intelligence services, both Great Britain and the United States, perhaps France or Israel, to get real hard human intelligence as to exactly what happened in Wuhan. And Dearlove made the point. He said, basically, if it comes down to trying to recruit Chinese nationals into that kind of an operation, that's what we ought to do. Because I think that's true. I think this is an intelligence operation, and ultimately that's when we're going to find out what the truth is.
And fair to assume that if this was being done in Wuhan, it's not isolated. China's probably got other labs in other parts of the country and maybe in other countries doing similar work, because if you're developing one crazy virus, you're probably developing 50 to be used as a weapon going forward, if we're going to be honest.
Actually, the State Department was honest. The State Department in 2021 made the point that the big concern with regard to this whole issue was the fact that China has been involved in serious biological warfare research, and that we know that the Chinese, military was interested in weaponizing coronaviruses as a weapon. And in fact, there's a great big article in the London Sunday Times on this issue, published several months ago, about what we know about what was going on in China at the time. I think we have an absolute right to be very, very concerned about gain of function research, however you define it, and what the Chinese military is interested in doing, because the evidence on the ground is they're very much interested in biomedical research for military purposes, and that's terrifying. And,
it is terrifying. And Robert Moffit, this is great stuff. I'm just up against the clock here. Thank you, sir. I hope the Five Eyes gets on this and we do a deep push to get this rooted out. I got a feeling it's going to take a stronger presence at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to make that happen. Robert Moffit, Senior Research Fellow at Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for being here, sir. We appreciate you. It is 4:22. It is 4:28, and I've talked myself into a corner. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not the last time it's going to happen. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show. Vince is on the mend. And earlier today, I said Larry O'Connor was a party wrapped in skin. Yeah, he's just a walking party. We'll explain just around the corner. Opelka in for Coglianese on WMAL. Welcome to Monday. It's Mike Opelka. That's me sitting in for Vince Coglianese. And if you follow me or if you follow Corey on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, there is a link to the details on Vince's condition and how he's doing. So you can get it there and listen to it. Or you can hang out with us and then get it later and listen to it, which is what I would recommend since there's so much going on today. We're keeping an eye on every single angle. We just went through the testimony of Dr. Fauci today in front of the House hearing. And one of the things that is really disturbing is, if you sit back and think logically about what's going on, many of us who believe this was engineered in a lab in China, and then you realize China probably has a lot of those labs out there, and you wonder, will we ever know the truth? The audience thinks about that, too. This audience is always so wise. 888-630-9625. Richard is in Fairfax, Virginia. Richard, welcome to the Vince Coglianese Show.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and you're doing a great job there. I happen to have a very good ear because I'm a retired opera singer, and I remember a few years ago, maybe a few months ago, I can't exactly know, but it was the news that coming over China, the person who was in the lab, I know you're mentioning the lab, but I'm getting to the person in the lab in China who developed it. You know what they did? They killed them.
Yeah, that's
news.
Richard, history should teach us much, and that's why we always like to take a look at history. And today there is a connection between what you're referencing with China and this anticipated lab-created monster. If we go back to 1989, this was the day China started killing people in Tiananmen Square. This was part of the massacre. The people were standing up to the Chinese government. So we know China has a history of this. And in fact, today, I believe it's on Capitol Hill. There's going to be a candlelight vigil this evening from the museum that honors the survivors of communism. And the victims of communism is always a very touching dinner that every year they have. I went to it at the train station at the Union Station a few years ago. It was an amazing display. But yeah, China has a history of just eliminating people who might have evidence against their regime. So yeah, that's a really good point, that whoever was involved is probably taking a dirt nap right now. They don't have whistleblowers, they have dirt nappers. We're not going to get any real truth out of China on this one.
Mike, I'm the only human being on this planet that got the Chinese Culture Award.
You got a Chinese Culture Award?
Yeah, let me tell you how it started. I was working in Germany for 15 years as a German opera singer. I'm an Italian from Coney Island, and I was trained by German, Austrian Jews, names like Leonard Bernstein and other Jews that could not work anymore in Germany because of Hitler. So they picked themselves up. These are great coaches and conductors, and they went to Italy. But when that Italian Mussolini hooks up with Hitler, they ran to London. And as history tells us, we bombed the hell out of London. They all came to the United States, and all of them were my teachers. They found that I have a voice, a certain type of voice that would play all the bad guys in opera. And I mean Mephistopheles, I mean Iago, and the Flying Dutchman. And here I am in Germany singing 15 years.
Wow.
I would still be there if my wife didn't die of terrible cancer, and the kids did not want to go back to Germany. So I opened up a company in Coney Island. It was named by the Dutch in the 1600s. Coney means rabbits, and it's a beach area with the famous Frankfurters there. And so I went back to my hometown and I opened up a big orchestra, and that's what we're going to do. Now I might give a concert and invite certain people to come to conduct. But they knew this. The Chinese in New York, there's not one of them. Well, there's two left, but most of them went back to China or took off, and they were arrested down in Manhattan. The same people that wanted me to help them with this group of kids that came over from Shanghai to do a concert. And so I helped them. It was only had to do with the arts and singing, and I was very good at it. And so I got to know the Communist Party. And after that, we went across the street from Lincoln Center, and we had a beer, and they gave me the Chinese Culture Award, a certificate, because I helped them compete with the American kids. China loves to be America, and they will be America because they just opened up a military base in Cuba, and they're only 100 miles from Florida.
Well, wait. Hold on a second here, Richard. Yeah, I know we know China's trying to have eyes and ears on us via the Cuban military base. But when you say China will be America, that makes me nervous. I would rather they convert to capitalism and freedom than despotism and dictatorships. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I hope you're thinking the same way.
Yes. Well,
okay, good.
Will they do that, or will they have too many people? They have billions of people, and our big companies would make more money by selling them, Apple and the rest of them, by selling them. Look, we only have 350 million people, but they have billions. They make more money. But our own companies here, develop it, and then they go to China and they produce it, and everything they produce belongs to them. So why shouldn't they? You got billions of people. Look at the money that they're making.
Well, yeah, we're not making good deals, as Donald Trump would say, when our American companies go over there to China. I have a question, kind of off topic but on topic with you, Richard. You're a trained opera singer. You said you played the perfect voice for villains like Iago, I guess, from Othello. Correct? You've played that role.
Yes. And I did it, and I might have sung for you the Toreador song. I did do two very good new parts, good parts. I did the part of John the Baptist in the opera Salome. And if you know anything about opera and Salome, a young teenage girl, the daughter of Herodias, John the Baptist is the cousin of Jesus, and they chopped my head off. So I have my head here on my piano, and every time I do the role, I take my head with me. They don't have the opera house doesn't have to make the head. And
well, that's
they're
good.
Still chopping heads off.
Yeah, have head, will travel. We'll take the role. That's great. Well, Corey Ingemort is dying to hear a little bit of the Toreador song.
Again? Okay. Well, Toreador angade, Toreador, Toreador, e son già piamui, son già combattan, e ne noate legar, che la mutatan, Toreador, l'amo tat, Toreador, Toreador, Toreador.
Bravo! Well done, Richard.
Oh, sweetheart, sir. You are a sweetheart. You should see. I have a television show now, but it's nothing for the networks. It's only the neighborhood television show, and Mike, it airs 3 times a week. And I'm bringing in all these famous directors with Zoom and everything. The show is such a success that it's all volunteer. No one gets paid.
Richard, your talent and your joy are going to lead you to bigger audiences. That's truly what's happening here, and we appreciate your sharing the story with us, and especially sharing a little bit of the Toreador song. Corey is beaming. He is glowing. He's so happy. Thank you, Richard. God bless you, my friend. Wow, that's amazing. I had a little bit of opera here. Now, one of the things that Richard brought up, which is really kind of amazing, he talked about how when Hitler came into power in Germany and started persecuting the Jews and telling them they couldn't work and you couldn't have a business, you couldn't have a job, it's all that stuff. So many people left. And it wasn't just the arts community. We go back to the architectural world and the not just arts, but arts and architecture. The entire Bauhaus school of art and engineering came to America. Walter Gropius, a great architect, left Germany, and I think it was less than 2 years later, he was the dean of the Harvard School of Architecture. So it was Germany's loss when they started persecuting the Jews, and that brain trust left and frankly saved the world from Nazi Germany because so many great scientists got the hell out of Dodge when things got crazy. What a wonderful call. Corey, is that the first time you've had an opera sung on the Vince Coglianese show? I think so. We got a resounding yes from Anna and Corey. I hope it's not the last. Who knows? Who knows? It might be. Let's continue the calls going because I never know where things are going. Alan is in Reston, Virginia. Hello, Alan. Welcome to the Vince Coglianese Show.
So much. I'm definitely not an opera singer. Not even going to attempt to try. But along the lines of your conversation earlier about Dr. Fauci, there's this one question. In medicine, I have a degree. And Dr. Fauci, you've studied the HIV virus, AIDS virus for 40 years, which is an mRNA virus for which you have no vaccine. What makes you think in 24 weeks you're going to have an mRNA virus for coronavirus that we now know the vaccine was a complete and illegitimate joke on millions of people around the world? Asking that question, let's get a response.
You know, Alan, you bring up a really important point, and I'm going to have an ADD moment here because I have to say, you say you're not an opera singer, but you got pipes like Mike Rowe. You sound a lot like Mike Rowe, the great Mike Rowe. So you might have some pipes you don't know about. But as it relates to the HIV vaccine and Dr. Fauci and the mRNA vaccines, I had a conversation with Cheryl Atkinson just 3 days ago about this very topic, because she did a story on her television show, Full Measure. And if I can pull it up, her explanation is really fascinating because she explains that the entire conundrum, the entire scandal about the COVID vaccines and what they do and don't do could be easily traced back to what did or didn't happen with mRNA vaccines and what Fauci and scientists knew as it relates to the HIV vaccine. So you've hit on something really important here, sir. If I can find that isolated segment, I will play it before the end of the show today. But really excellent
That'd
point.
be great.
Thank you.
That's the key. That's the key to unraveling all this.
That's excellent. Well done, sir. Good work. Good work. Smartest audience on the planet. Let's do one more quick call here. Dennis in Annapolis, Maryland. Hello, Dennis.
Hey, Mike. Great job as always.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Just a couple of quick comments, if I may. Kamala Harris, don't think she's smart enough to be on the Supreme Court, and also if she opted out of being the nominee of Joe is bumped out, there's no guarantee that she would get that nomination if Trump wins. So she'd be taking a huge gamble.
Well, they would have to do a confirmation before the election.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Right. Before Biden.
Yeah, you convince
fails.
Sotomayor to retire. If she gets nominated, you replace a woman of color with a woman of color. Boom.
Yeah, okay. And then regarding Fauci, I never heard him during the COVID pandemic. I never heard him lobbying to press the Chinese about getting more information about the COVID vaccine and the lab and all the circumstances. I never heard him pressing them at all. And it makes me, really wonder. And dovetailing into your previous caller is that the failure of the vaccines and Fauci's, involvement in them, he set the table for now the huge distrust in any large-scale vaccine development if we have another pandemic. The public, that's why, nobody's getting these additional COVID vaccines anymore.
Yeah, that's a big, important point. And last week we had a brief conversation with Cleveland Clinic Dr. Michael Roizen about the bird flu, which is now jumping from mammals to humans, from animals to humans. And if it jumps from humans to humans, then we have a problem. But the big pharma people are saying, hang on, we've got a vaccine ready for you. It's all ready. Just come get it. But there's so much vaccine hesitation, and there's absolute understanding for that, because we feel like we've still not gotten the full story on the COVID vaccines. So very excellent points again. I appreciate you being there, Dennis. Thanks. I'm up against the clock, so I have to step aside, take a quick break. It is 4:55 on this Monday. A pretty good Monday from where I'm sitting. It's getting to summertime, so it's going to be warm. It's a beautiful day to get outside. Take WMAL with you on your phone. Get the app. It's really great. You can listen back to the stuff you missed. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince. The story of where Vince is and when he'll be back is online, so you should go to Twitter X and check it out. I will be here as long as he needs me, whenever he needs me. That's part of the deal. Pointing a finger at a mayor who is going to be, I guess, given the title of dumbest mayor alive, Mayor Melvin Carter. And I know that probably covers a lot of mayors in terms of competition. Minneapolis Mayor Melvin Carter makes $140,814 a year, not counting benefits. $140,814 a year. He probably has a lot of great benefits. Like he probably has a driver. He has a security detail. There's probably food at the office there at the mayor's home as well. He's probably got a pretty good setup there. But he rushed to Twitter to post that he was so thrilled and thankful that Joe Biden had forgiven his student loan debt. He actually posted a screen cap of what would have been his payment for his student loans and thanked Joe Biden for taking care of that for him. You really aren't paying attention, are you? If you're out there bragging that you, who are the mayor of a major city in this country, yes, what a shock, he's a Democrat, are thanking the president for going around the Supreme Court to pay off your student loan debts. All the plumbers and auto mechanics, thank you, you dolt. Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on WMAL.